quickly again, if you heard some feedback, that was the chat box echo. Welcome to the fourth Doula Business Chat. So we're talking about staying current. I'll be checking the chat box if anyone has any input. And just a discussion about what's going on and how we should be staying current, reasons why and reasons how. Just a little quick information about why. And these are some of the reasons that I put together on why I like to stay current. And by staying current, I mean staying up to date with research, what's going on, latest practices in the field of childbirth, keeping up to date with trends. So it might even be keeping up to date with our customers, trends in our customers that might be communication styles or what's important to them, what's a hot topic with them. So not just research, but kind of what's going on with both the field that we practice in and our customers. And without much delay, I would love to introduce my special guest, who is very definitely, this is a topic that is important to her, and I'd love to hear her thoughts. And I'd like to introduce Rebecca Decker from Evidence-Based Birth. Hey, Rebecca.
Hi, Alice. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on staying current, maybe ways that you recommend, and just anything that has to do with that topic.
Sure. So one of the things I've learned from getting to know doulas who follow my blog and who I'm friends with is that they are just incredibly interested in kind of soaking up as much knowledge as they possibly can. Does that sound familiar to you, Alice?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like a sponge.
Yeah, like a sponge. And, you know, I just feel like in many ways, some doulas that I know are more, you know, immersed in trying to figure out what the latest research says about different things than a lot of practitioners, because you know, there's a lot of barriers to healthcare professionals staying up to date. You know, they're so busy practicing that it's often very difficult to, you know, keep abreast of the latest changes in the field. Even if they do try, it's very difficult to sift through the massive amounts of information out there. And so there are some resources that clinicians use to stay up to date that I can recommend for doulas as well. One of them is probably only available to you if you have, you know, you're somehow related to a hospital in terms of like or a university, and you have a relationship with that, like either as an employee or as a student, and that's called UpToDate. UpToDate.com, but it's incredibly expensive to buy a subscription to it. If you know someone with a subscription, you can, you know, bug them and you know, ask them to send you the latest article on whatever topic you're interested in. And as an UpToDate member, I am allowed to email a certain number of people the article, so the article will get sent to you by email. So UpToDate is basically a company that it's kind of like Evidence-Based Birth, but for all of healthcare. And so they write articles. They basically hire the experts in the field to write reviews of what the research says about every topic you can possibly imagine related to healthcare. The only problem with that site is that sometimes the OB articles tend to rely a little bit more on opinion than evidence. So you get to the end of the article and it says, well, you know, there's really not that much research evidence on this, but our opinion is that women should have this procedure done. So you have to, you know, kind of take that with a grain of salt. Another resource that people aren't really aware of, unless you're a Lamaze member, this is actually something that is available to Lamaze members, is the Cochrane Library, spelled C-O-C-H-R-A-N-E. And so that you have to have a subscription to as well. There are actually some states and some countries that own subscriptions. I think Colorado has a state subscription, but I'm not 100% positive on that, so don't quote me on that. But there are countries that actually have subscriptions. And then, of course, universities and hospitals usually do. And so Cochrane does these huge reviews of the different topics. So if you're looking, for example, you want to learn something about delayed cord clamping, you could go to summaries.cochrane.org and type in delayed cord clamping, and it'll pop up the summary of the latest research on that. So even if you're not a subscriber, you can still at least get the summary. So that's the second resource I recommend to people. And then the third one is called PubMed. A lot of research evidence on childbirth is not really easily found on Google. You can use Google Scholar, but PubMed is where everything is indexed. That's the U.S. National Library's way of indexing medical research. And it's very easy to search, and you can search for any topic. The problem is you might get way more than what you want. It's hard to figure out, like, what exactly do you want, so you have to kind of maybe get some help in figuring out which keywords or key terms you should search for. But the U.S. actually passed a law a couple years ago saying that any research that was funded by federal money has to be available to the public within 1 year of publication. So there are increasingly more and more journal articles on maternity care that are open access, meaning anyone can read them. Unfortunately, you still have probably the majority behind a paywall of about $30 per article. So in that case, it can be hard to really stay up to date. If things are constantly behind a paywall and you don't have the funds, who wants to shell out $30 to read a 10-page article anytime you want to look something up, and you don't even know if it's going to be a good article or not. But at the same time, by just looking at the summary that's called the abstract when you're trying to look something up on PubMed, that doesn't give you the entire picture of what was actually found in that research study. So that's why it's really good to be able to, that's one of the reasons why I created evidence-based birth, is because I felt like so much of childbirth information was behind paywalls. And not only that, but you couldn't understand it, even if you were able to access it. So that's why I created evidence-based birth. Its mission is to basically take that information out of the medical journals and put it in the hands of mothers and families. And what ended up happening is that doulas were like the first people to really latch on to that and become like the biggest fans of evidence-based birth, because they are so interested in trying to, give their clients evidence-based information that they just, soaked it up, and it went. I'm convinced that that's why evidence-based birth went viral within a few months of me launching it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's so true, that doulas are super hungry for, what's the latest thing out there, what's ACOG saying, and now I think the next challenge is, now that we have that information, how do we help disseminate it? I know that, like, the latest ACOG statement, or the big one last year in early 2014, with the statement about active labor changing from 4 to 6 and everything, that definitely has not traveled through the care providers in my area. So then you're in kind of a strange situation, but at least you're up to date on the information, right?
Right, and that's the key, is making it publicly accessible, because if we hang around and wait for OBs and even midwives to wake up to the new research evidence that comes out, which many of them try really hard to practice based on the latest evidence, but a lot of them, either can't or don't. And if we wait, it'll take forever for anything to change. So that's why I believe in giving that information to consumers, they're on the receiving end of that care. And one of the things about evidence-based birth is I have disclaimers all over the place because I want people to not just like take that information and just kind of be like a rogue mom, like, okay, like, well, this website said this, so I'm going to do this. Like, I really want it to be a tool where they talk with their care provider about the information, you know, as a safety net. Because what if the information in that blog article doesn't apply to them? You know, what if they have a high-risk condition and that article, you know, said this doesn't apply to you, but they didn't see that. So it's really important that they talk about it with their care provider. But by having the consumers kind of pressure their care providers and challenge them, I think that's the fastest way to get change. And so that's what I do. I got a really reaffirming message last fall from someone who told me that she was in labor and her doctors told her that she had failure to progress. And so she Googled failure to progress, and of course the first thing that pops up is my article on failure to progress. And she read the latest definitions of, you know, what makes up a stalled labor, and she realized that her doctors were, you know, not following the guidelines, and she advocated for herself and ended up, you know, pushing for more time and having the birth that she wanted. Now, it's not necessarily, you know, what I want is someone to be, to me, it is kind of scary to know that people take that information and use it. But she did talk with them about it, and I think it's, you know, it's very empowering to women to have that accurate information when they're in a position where there's a power differential, and you know, they know they don't have as much power as the care provider. So having that information almost, you know, helps them have a more equal conversation where they can really talk about their care decisions.
Yeah. Well, knowledge is power, right? So
right.
If we have the information, and even as a childbirth educator, I feel like, you know, if we are teaching the latest information, like teaching about the ACOG statement, then at least that might open the window for that conversation with their care providers, like you said, or maybe the families will go do the research themselves and find out more information. And I think that is just really important to know what's going on out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Any other thoughts? How long has evidence-based birth been around? Maybe just give a quick history.
It will be having its third birthday on April 30, so it's not even 3 years old yet. So
cool.
It's kind of crazy that, you know, in some ways it feels like it's been around forever, but it's still a very young website. And so, yeah, it's exciting. It's flown by, and it really only took, you know, like a month or two for it to really pick up steam. And I'm telling you, it was doulas sharing articles on Facebook. And before you know it, I have all my friends telling me, hey, Rebecca, my friends from law school were sharing your articles on Facebook. And so it's just like it really spread. And I think doulas and childbirth educators played a really big role in that, because it's a important resource for them to share with their clients. And so I'm really happy to be able to provide that and to get evidence-based birth out there in more places. And like you and I talked about, like, how can we get evidence-based birth out into hospitals? I don't know if you want to tell them about what we dreamed up.
Yeah, well, we are working on a project. Yeah, Rebecca and I are working on a couple ideas to get that conversation going in a fun way. So just be on the lookout from both of us, and maybe in the next couple weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe mid-February, we'll hear a little bit more. Something exciting and fun. Mm-hmm. Now we do have, I know you got to run, Rebecca, but I do have one question in the chat room that you might be able to answer or give a thought about. Kaya says, how can we tactfully bring up evidence-based information to clients who may have been told something different by their care providers without undermining their care?
Okay,
That's
that's a great
a good
question. So
question.
I actually developed a role play about that with one of my friends who's a doula and a childbirth educator. And so we developed a role play about what do you do with the client when a client says, you know, I really love my OB and she was there for my last 2 babies and she told me that, you know, I either need to have this baby's too big and I either need to have a planned C-section or have an induction before 38 weeks, you know? And my, you know, in the role play, the doula holds up a sign that says, you know, Julie dies. You know, it's like that's the feeling a doula gets, you know, when they're confronted with that kind of thing. They just want to die. And so she said, I forget, how did we do it in the role play, but something along the lines of, you know, I think she's great, and I understand you have a great connection with your OB, but Dr. So-and-so don't always, Dr. So-and-so and I don't always see eye to eye when it comes to evidence-based practices. And another thing you can do is you can always ask permission. That's something that I've learned in my counseling training background. Instead of just giving advice, you could say, you know, well, would it be okay with you if I shared some evidence-based resources for you about the care for suspected big babies and let you do a little bit more research on this so that you can have a more informed, you know, discussion with your doctor? So asking permission before you give advice is very important, or even before you point someone to resources. So because it's gaining their, you know, gaining their permission before you kind of give them advice or resources. So that's very important.
I really like that because you're opening that window for them to say yes. Yes, I do want that information, but you're also allowing them to say no thank you if, you know, if they feel like that's something that they don't really want to take in or look into. So
right.
yeah.
Right. And I think yeah, a lot of it is about, it's not so much you telling them what the right thing is to do, but if they discover on their own what the evidence says, in many ways that's more and it's more significant. That's a component. I think doulas should all have training in motivational interviewing, how to talk with someone when you're facing a dilemma like that, and get the client to come up, you know, with the solution rather than the doula handing the solution to the client, because the client is the one who comes up with it, and there's ways to guide them towards that. But that's why if you know, I highly recommend that. I think motivational interviewing should just be a part of doula training because they're always dealing with situations like this.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And it is so much more. It's empowering to her and her family if they come up with their own decisions, right? Instead of feeling like I did what the doula suggested. They, you know, they took in all the information and then they were able to come to a conclusion.
Right. And you don't want it to, you know, it's like you don't want it to become this adversarial thing, you know. It's either going to trust the doula or trust the care provider. But yeah, it's a big problem, and that's why we came up with there was a class that I taught at Doula in Lamaze last year. And so we came up with an entire role play where we went through an entire scenario where a doula was stuck in a situation with a client who was being, you know, provided advice by her care provider that was not evidence-based, and how do you handle that?
Nice, nice. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I so appreciate your time.
No problem.
I'd love for you to stay, but I know that you are limited.
Yeah, I gotta get going.
But thank you, and we will have some fun stuff in the future.
All right, sounds good. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
So Rebecca was talking about the Doula Lamaze conference. I wanted to talk a little bit about conferences, but I would first like to take a second and just say hello to the other visitors in our video. So I see Michelle. Would you like to just say hello and introduce yourself and just
Sure.
give a quick hi?
Hi, yeah, my name is Michelle Ballou, and I'm in New York. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
I've been a doula for 5 years. I'm a prenatal massage therapist and do infant massage and a lactation counselor. And yeah, I'm really excited to be in my first chat with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we have Lindsay. Hey,
Hi.
Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Rose. I go by Lindsay Rose and Lindsay Fisher. Fisher is my last name, Rose is my middle name. And I actually just finished my certification, so I've been doing births here and there for
cool.
a couple of years, but I just finally got the official paperwork. But I work full-time. I do marketing for full-time for companies, and then I have 2 small kids, so I can only take on a birth here and there as it comes along, but it's my passion. It's something I love, so I'm a learner and a studier, and I want to know as much as I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so I see the chat box is kind of getting going. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shout them out, and I will keep checking. Also, just if you are on social media, don't forget our hashtag is it's on the screen, DoulaBizChat. I'm going to try to remember to take an Instagram picture so I can post that of our chat. So other ways of staying current and up to date. And I know Rebecca mentioned teaching a class at the Lamaze Donor Conference, and I wanted to just talk a little bit and really kind of plug conferences. Now, they are an expense, which as doulas, sometimes expenses add up without income adding up, and so those they might not be something that we can do every year, but I have found them to be just an awesome resource for information and just a weekend filled with learning and growing, and not just learning in the sessions, but learning from the other doulas and childbirth professionals that you meet. So I've been, gosh, I guess I've been to about 5 or 6 conferences along the way. The most recent one being the Doula Lamaze last year, and I just feel like it was invaluable. Now, the other thing just to remember about conferences that I'm sure that most people know, but I don't know that I really realize that so many of your continuing education credits that you need to use, if you're certified, you can get done in a conference. So if you're recertifying like every 3 years for a childbirth certification or a doula certification, you can usually get them all done in one conference. And then conferences expenses are also tax deductible, usually most of them, all the travel and that kind of thing. So so there's that. So I just wanted to, here's my conference booklet from last year. I have a little show and tell, and just tell everybody that the Lamaze ICA conference is coming up in Vegas in September, and I'm going to be there, and I think it's going to be fun. So if you are looking to get some education that way, put it on your radar. There's also, I think Dona's having a virtual conference this year, and then there's definitely several other conferences going on, but that is something just to be aware of as another way to learn. And then staying current, obviously blogs like Evidence-Based Birth is a good resource. The other one that I really like is Science and Sensibility. So I know I'm talking about Lamaze a lot, but there are so many good resources. The Science and Sensibility blog written by Lamaze, my favorite thing about it is the way that they take the research and really put it in a way that's easy for us non-researchers to understand. And sometimes when I read those actual research articles, I can get lost. Like, I kind of start with the abstract and then start reading down the article, and then I'm thinking, yeah, I need an interpreter. So I really like the way evidence-based birth, evidence-based birth and science and sensibility really break it down sort of in a more digestible language and still giving you the facts, but in a way that I can really process. Does anybody else, Michelle or Lindsay, do you guys follow any blogs that you feel like are, or anyone in the chat room, that are really good learning resources?
I actually follow the ones that you've already described. I'm so happy to meet Rebecca, actually, because evidence-based birth has definitely been a go-to for me. But I've been recently just checking in on ACOG recently, because I do feel like that is it's a great source to kind of get things, kind of see what's upcoming. They'll tell you what's coming and get abstracts from there. So that's what I've been using mostly. But I feel it's really helpful for me because something that I'm very passionate about is informed choice. And I feel that one of the ways I really like to help my moms is having, like Rebecca mentioned, the information so that they can advocate for themselves, so that I'm not advocating for them, but I can help guide them to where they're going, because I'm finding so many people coming to me saying, I heard this, and then just rattling off a myth that they've heard in the culture, or they've heard from a movie even. I mean, I don't know where people are getting their information from. There's so many myths. So it's really helpful with I like evidence-based birth a lot, because I can steer even my moms there, because they want to read too, and they want to absorb, especially early in the pregnancy, and that helps them. And eventually I tell them to cut off all information, no more
Right.
time to tune in, no more reading research at all. But those are the two that I use the most.
Awesome. So I also do that. Sometimes will say, there is a time for reading and research, but there is also a time for peace and calm and just sort of letting things be for a bit and not adding.
I recently came across the Squat Birth Journal, and I've been reading some things with them, and I've really been impressed, but I wanted to know what your guys' opinions were. Yeah, yay! So I find a lot of really great information on there, but I'm just starting to try to find, like, my biggest thing right now is, finding the evidence-based research, because it's so muddled.
Yeah, that's awesome that you brought up Squat. Before the chat, I tried to pull together the resources that I use or look at, and I definitely, each of them has a different flavor. So Squat is definitely one that, and if anyone hasn't heard of it, check them out. It's a very reasonable subscription, and it's gosh, the pictures in here are gorgeous. I mean, it's a very visual journal, or birth journal they call it, and it definitely has some real important information. I mean, I had been reading this article from Christine Morton, who wrote Birth Ambassadors, and I think just a really good resource. And just while I'm doing a show and tell, I'll show that if you guys look, our Lamaze members get the Journal of Perinatal Education. So that's a really good one too. It is filled with studies, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to decipher, but it's a great resource, and that comes pretty regularly. I can't remember, maybe I should know the answer to this, but maybe 4 times a year. But those I think are definitely good resources. And then I know Doula does the International Doula magazine, where it's a combination of stories and articles, and there's definitely research updates in there as well. So those are all good ways to stay up to date. The other sort of route of staying up to date would be doing continuing education. So there's a lot of options with that right now. I'm seeing a lot more education done online. So I know of some, and I looked through real quick just to see what was out there, and I found a lot that was out there. There's online trainings and in-person trainings for things like Rebozo, TENS, the TENS machine. There's extra relaxation training. There's some like breastfeeding for doula courses, and then there's a combination of in-person and online. So I think doing continuing education is also another way that we can stay current, not necessarily with current research, but have our skills stay current, where we're really staying up to date with, what are the latest doula skills that we can either learn or refresh. So keeping our skills current, I think, is also a benefit. Has anybody done any continuing education, either online or in person? I know I did advanced doula training, and that was really good. And it was, I can't remember how long. It was a few hours. I think maybe it was half of a day, and I feel like I could have spent all day learning about the Rebozo, or 2 days or more.
Yeah, I took
Have you guys done any training?
Yeah, I've taken Rebozo class. I love, actually, in-person trainings are my favorite. And I'm working with Birthing from Within right now with Virginia Bobro and Pam England, and they do some really nice online courses. I just took a birth story listening class, and they also do in-person workshops as well. So that's what I'm into now, and I like to also go to the different organizations and look through their continuing education reading lists, and then I kind of pull out books that I don't know, and I rarely read a book cover to cover, but I'll go and I'll grab it and I'll scan through and kind of just pick out whatever resonates with me, and I find that helps me a lot to not put pressure on myself to have to read something cover to cover, but really just pulling out nuggets. And I have limited time with my own children, and so just pulling things here and there, kind of absorbing whatever I can, really helps and take off the pressure of having to do it a certain way.
I love that.
Last year they had the Kappa conference, which is through the organization I'm certified through, in Charlotte, North Carolina, which I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I just went and volunteered, and I watched and I just listened and I absorbed the whole thing because I'd never been to any of the conferences before, and it just happened to be in my backyard. My trainer, class trainer, was really heavily involved, so I just asked her how to get involved, and then I picked up someone from the airport, and I just got to meet people, and I would have to say it was a really great experience. They brought in, I got to hear Dr. Sears speak, all kinds of really great people. So it was, I actually will have to say the craziest session I took was it had something to do with dogs and how dogs can help postpartum, and how to introduce dogs to new babies. It was like the craziest off the wall topic you would ever think, like, I'm never going to sign up for this class, but I just happened to be there helping out, and it was fascinating, and I learned so much from it. So I definitely am looking forward to some of the conferences that are going to happen this year.
Very cool. Oh, that's awesome. Good. I love to hear another positive conference person. Now, I checked the chat, and Kaya said that she gets midwifery today, so that's another resource that she's using. I'm sure that's awesome, and now I wanted to. And then Doula Mama says prodoula.com, so definitely more resources that we can use. When we were talking a little bit about book, I know that we talked about books a little bit, and books are a great way to stay up to date as well. And it is hard to read a book, I agree, cover to cover. But sometimes just, looking through the top, the list, I'll open up the chapters and say, okay, well, I'm going to today read this one chapter, or this pertains to my client, to motivate me to read a little bit more. And something that I've been wanting to do for a while, I am going to do, in 2 chats from now, a book club. So I've been wanting to read the book Mindful Birthing. I don't know if anyone has read that out there, but it's fairly new. And so if anyone would like to discuss that book in a kind of a book club format, that will be Tuesday, February 24th, probably at the same time, 10 p.m. So the details, it might change a bit, but probably that will be the day that we'll do that Mindful Birthing book club. And you don't have to read the whole book in order to discuss the book, but maybe read some of it and we can just chat about that book. So we'll see how it goes, if I have any takers or if everyone's too busy. But I thought it would be something fun to do. And I'd love to hear suggestions either online or from the chat if anyone else has any ideas for books that we should all kind of take a look at. Or I know there's a lot of standards that we're probably all familiar with. And then, so while you're thinking about your books, I'm going to pop over to the chat and just read a comment that I thought was funny. Paloma says that Ina May was at a conference she was at last year, and she said she was like a 5-year-old. And I totally relate. I actually haven't been to a conference with Ina May yet, but I've seen Penny Simkin several times. And the first time that I saw Penny, I was a little bit shy, meeting someone that has been that influential in your life. And then she ended up sitting next to me. There was an empty chair, and I had my iPad, and I just said, "Hey, Penny, will you be in a picture with me?" And of course, she was the nicest person ever and said, "Sure." So, yeah, I got a great picture. But Ina May, I would definitely try to grab that picture moment as well. So, any books, final thoughts about resources or staying up to date?
Yeah, I'd like to share a book. This kind of touches on what Rebecca was mentioning about motivational questioning or interviewing with clients. This book is Brief Coaching for Lasting Solutions. It's in Sue Kimberg, and it's one of the required readings for Birthing from Within certification, but it is, you can see how much I've got it. It's amazing. It's really, really, really helpful. I'm also a health coach, and it's a great way. It's about solution-focused dialogue. So it's a great way of learning how to communicate with your clients so that they are the ones coming up with the answers. And by asking questions to help them find out what's important to them, because I find too, and you may find this working with clients, that there's when somebody is having a dilemma, there's question upon question upon question upon question that gets them all muddled up with what even do I research, because one thing leads to another. And by kind of focusing in and helping them find out what the real question is, it can just eliminate all sorts of extraneous efforts and find out what the answer is that they really need to know. And it's been invaluable to me. So it's not necessarily doula birth related exactly, but it's really about supporting our clients, and it has been invaluable.
That's awesome. And Michelle, would you just talk a little bit? You said you were taking a course. I wrote it down, but I would love to hear a little bit more about the birth was it Birth Story Listening? What was that course?
Yes, it's called Birth Story Listening. You can find out about it on at the Birthing From Within website, birthingfromwithin.com, and it's an online course, and they've got a couple coming up actually in February and March, and it's like an 8. Well, the one I took was an 8-week course, and it's really about learning how to listen to birth stories in a way that is very healing. And it's giving space for moms to process their birth stories. And of course, in the training and in the workshop, you get to process some of your own, because really it's all about emptying our own cups so that we can be open for our clients. So it's really about learning how to be open and heal ourselves so that we can, in turn, be impartial and open to working with others. It's fabulous. I really highly recommend it.
Oh, that's cool. I hadn't heard about that at all. So I'll put together a list. Probably tomorrow on the blog we'll have the replay of the chat, and I'll have a list of all the books. I know Lindsay had asked the question about what the book, the title. Michelle, it was Brief Coaching for Lasting Solutions. Is that right?
Yep, by Insu Kinberg.
Awesome.
Do this.
So I'll put that. Cool. Ooh, I need to go make that big. Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Here's
that. Awesome. That does sound like a
great coaching resource.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice too to have something a little bit different, right? Than a birth book, like to expand our other skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That I do feel like at a time, even though I did suggest reading another birth-related book, I do feel like, going the route of, some of our other skills is going to make us a more well-rounded doula, right? So absolutely. I'm usually on the business side.
I find that when I'm working with clients, when problems or research comes up that's needed, that's kind of how I follow the path of what I'm learning next. It's when a client presents something to me that I don't know enough about, or I want to know more, instead of just that way I kind of have a motivation myself to learn it. If someone texts me some question, I say, oh, I'm going to go find out whatever I can about that.
Yeah, and that's a great way. Targeted learning, right?
That's what I've got time for right now.
I love it. That's really good. Okay, well, just in wrapping up, if there's any other questions online or in the chat box, I'm popping over the chat box. Doula Mama says, great suggestions on the book and online course, Michelle. So I think there's definitely going to be, a lot of us are going to be checking those out. Some more resources. So just as we're wrapping up, I will go ahead and put all the notes from the chat on the blog tomorrow. I'll put a link to any of the courses that we've talked about that I can find, any of the conferences that are out there. Doula Mama in the chat box is asking me to show my Penny Simpkin selfie, so that will definitely be on the page as well. I still have it. It's prominent in my life. I'll also put any of the information that Rebecca from Evidence-Based Birth gave out. She gave out a lot of the more research article information, so that'll all be compiled too. And I'd love to, if anyone has any final thoughts, to add them to the comment. The comments on that blog would be such a help. I think it's only, I talked about learning from blogs, learning from conferences, learning from continuing education classes, journals, reading books, but we really didn't talk about just learning from each other. So, that's another source. So staying up to date. I mean, I definitely feel like being on Twitter and being on Facebook and getting quick access to a lot of the articles and any of the news that's out there. I know I have a Google alert set up for the word doula, and so I get that alerts for any time doula is used in an article, which is super helpful. And usually I'll get it from Google, but I've already seen it tweeted by someone else. So, just kind of staying up to date with the news that way, I think, and learning from each other. And then, getting together and staying doulas in our community. That's another way we talk about. I think it's helpful about, what's the latest at this hospital? Is there a hospital policy that I'm not aware of, or something going on here or there? That's another way that we should really try to stay up to date and stay what's going on. And it is a little bit harder if we're not taking births regularly. We probably need to kind of do a little bit more of that in between births, just to kind of keep up to date. I know when I dropped out of the doula field, when I had babies, I had 2 children while I was doing doula work, and during that time off, I felt like I really lost out a little bit of what was going on with current practice, locally and in current research. So I really felt like I had to step it up, getting back in. Next chat, Kaya, is anyone else? Michelle, did you have some? Oh, no. Next chat is, oh gosh, let me look real quick. I don't want to quote it wrong. I have Thursday, February 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm kind of picking these times just to try to get a variety of time zones. I'm open to suggestions. So if you are missing the chat and you're always watching this on replay, just send me a text. Send me a message, an email, alice@yourdoulabag. I don't have a topic yet. So for this next one, the topic has not been defined. I love ideas. I have a bunch of ideas, but I would rather go with something that somebody suggests. So throw out an idea. And then that 2 chats from now is going to be the book club. And it won't be the whole time, but probably, a good majority of the time we will talk about mindful birthing and just thoughts about that book. So just a reminder, hashtag DoulaBizChat. And I really appreciate you guys spending time with me, Lindsay and Michelle, and being bold to be online, be on video. I really appreciate that. That was cool. And
yeah.
Everybody Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say thank you, and I do have to say on what you just shared about learning from each other, it's really why I've kind of started just finding your emails around and learning about you and saying, oh, there's other doulas out there trying to get information to each other, because it can feel very isolating doing this work. And so it's really cool because now we have the internet to reach out to each other, and learning from each other and our own experience is really so invaluable to me. And our local doulas get together every month to do a chat, and that's been really helpful. So if anybody's missing that community resource, it really helps to talk about the hospitals and the local OB practices and who's doing breech delivery and who's not, and which home birth midwives are doing certain things. So that is really helpful for me as well as far as staying current. So I appreciate this avenue. So thank you, Alice.
Awesome. You're welcome. Thank you. That's great. You have a local group, and I love that we do have this technology, and usually it's working pretty awesome. And how cool that we are able to connect with doulas from all over North. At least we've got North America right now. So pretty fun, pretty awesome. Well, thanks everybody for the time. I really appreciate it. It's an awesome job that we do, but it is a little bit crazy. So I love being able to share and talk about it, and keep up the good doula work. For everybody who's on call, I guess like me, I should probably head to bed. Thanks so much, guys. See you at the next chat.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.